Hey, what's going on everyone? Today in this video we are going to be talking about the Educator Tax Deduction. And if you want to learn about the Educator Tax Deduction, you have definitely come to the right place. This is a wonderful tax deduction that the IRS has included specifically for educators that teach kindergarten through 12th grade. And if you're here watching this video, then you probably want to learn everything that you need to learn about the Educator Tax Deduction. And I'm here to tell you everything that you need to know. And in this video, we are going to go over the who, what, when, where, why of everything you need to know. So let's first start with who. So the Educator Expense Tax Deduction is obviously for educators, but who is an educator? Well, for the purpose of this tax deduction, an educator is, let me just look at my list real quick. An eligible educator, I should say, is a teacher, instructor, counselor, principal, or aide that has at least 900 hours of work in a given school year. So that means, for example, I am actually work part-time as a teacher aide, as a special education teacher aide, but I definitely don't work 900 hours in a school year. I only work part-time a small amount. And so I technically don't qualify for this tax deduction. But any of those other educators that do work at least 900 hours in the school year, they will qualify for this tax deduction, granted they meet the other requirements, which I'm going to discuss very shortly. So when it comes to what the tax deduction is for, well, it's for out-of-pocket expenses that educators face. So we all know that, teachers and other educators, they have to pay a lot of money pretty much for different things when it comes to their classrooms out of pocket. There's many different things that they could have to spend out of pocket for. They deserve to basically not pay taxes on the amount that they spend on that. I think that's pretty fair, right? And that's kind of the main idea on why the IRS has this tax deduction as well. So this tax deduction can be used for things like professional development. It can be used for things like classroom supplies, computer equipment, software, and pretty much anything to do with those computers, any kind of other things like books and supplementary materials, anything to do with the classroom really that are out-of-pocket expenses for an educator. And keep in mind, when I'm talking about an educator, I know there are many different kinds of educators, but this tax deduction is specifically for kindergarten through 12th grade in a program that is basically follows the state law in which that teacher or that educator is educating in. So it's not for things like university professors or private tutors or something else like that. So this is specifically for K through 12 education, like at a traditional state school and things like that. So now that you know about that, let's talk about where you're actually going to file to take this tax deduction. Well, you're going to actually take this deduction on Form 1040 Schedule 1, and it is line 10. It is the very first line on your adjustments to income. So let me just put that up on the screen really quickly. As you can see on the 1040 Schedule 1, if you go to Part 2, number 10, it says Educator Expenses, and you will just fill in how much educator expenses you have up to the limit, which we'll talk about in a minute. And that's going to help reduce your taxable income. Because the educator tax deduction is a tax deduction and it's not a tax credit. So a tax deduction reduces your taxable income while a tax credit reduces your tax bill. So in this case, for this is a tax deduction, it actually reduces the amount of income that gets taxed. And this one happens to be a tax deduction that is an above the line tax deduction. So on that form that we just talked about, the Schedule 1, it is included. It reduces your income before it gets taxed. So it is an adjustment to your gross income, which equals adjusted gross income. And I have a lot more to tell you about the educator tax expense, but really quick, I would just really appreciate if you're liking this video, please like the video on YouTube. It really helps me out and it motivates me to keep making videos to help you guys out. At the same time, subscribe to the channel if you have any kind of interest in personal finance, tax savings, saving money, investing, or anything like that, because that is what On Cash Flow is all about. It is pretty much all encompassing, and I love talking about it, I love researching, and I love answering your questions. Now let's get back to it and talk about why this is a tax deduction. Well, out-of-pocket expenses for educators, it kind of seems, unfair that they would have to pay out-of-pocket at their job, right, to do their job. But it is kind of a reality for many educators in that field. And so this is kind of a way to level the playing field and kind of make it a little bit more fair, as you're already paying a little bit of out of pocket for some of these things in your classroom or at the school. Why would you need to pay taxes on that amount of income as well? So this is kind of a small relief, a very small relief that educators can have for their out-of-pocket expenses. And educators are awesome, so why not have a tax deduction for them? And now we get to the really important part, and that is how much this tax deduction is. Probably the number one thing that you want to know if you're watching this video. And the tax deduction is worth $250. So it is actually not very significant. But that is $250 each. So if you are married and filing jointly, and both of you are educators, a qualified educator, then you could possibly deduct up to $500 on your return. But it has to be $250 per educator. So it cannot be just $500 for one educator and $0 for the other. It has to be $250 each, up to $500. So generally, it is $250 that you can reduce your taxable income for these out-of-pocket expenses. And one more really important thing that I want to talk about is things that you just need to keep in mind. So you need to keep in mind that you should always keep documentation of your expenses for any kind of tax deductions that you plan on taking, or tax credits, or anything related to tax. So you should always want to keep documentation. So even for a small tax deduction as the educator tax deduction, you should keep your expenses, like you should keep receipts and documentation of any out-of-pocket expenses that are going to qualify for this tax deduction. That's always important. And as I mentioned earlier, this is an above-the-line tax deduction. So you can take this tax deduction whether you itemize your taxes or whether you take the standard deduction. It's technically not considered a deduction, it's considered a adjustment to your income. So like I showed you on Schedule 1, you can see that is an adjustment to your income. So before your income even gets taxed, it is adjusted down with all those adjustments, including this adjustment, which is the educator tax deduction. And another thing you need to keep in mind is that these expenses that you do claim, they have to be out of pocket. So you can't be reimbursed from them from your work and things like that. There are a few other requirements, but basically they need to come out of your own pocket, okay? So you can't be reimbursed for them, or else that kind of levels the playing field. So that's the whole reason behind it. It's trying to be a little more fair by offering this tax deduction to educators because they have out-of-pocket expenses usually for their classrooms and things like that. So let me give you just a quick example to kind of sum everything up. So here's the example. We have a teacher working in 6th grade and they are working at a state school, a public school. They made, let's say, $50,000 in 1 year, and they had out-of-pocket expenses that were at least $250. Well, they can deduct that educator expense on their adjustment to their income on Schedule 1, and they can reduce that $50,000 to $49,750 of adjusted gross income. And then of course whatever else they have if they have any more. And then basically that $49,750 is what is going to be taxed at the federal level, because their taxable income got reduced by this adjustment to their income. And that's how this tax deduction works in the first place. If you're watching this video, then I can bet that you want to learn all kinds of different things when it comes to saving money on your taxes, reducing your expenses, maybe investing, and things like that. If so, you've come to the right place, because I actually created this really good resource, a really good video called How to Achieve Financial Independence, and I break it down pretty much step by step on what you need to do. And if you don't know what financial independence is, and basically really quick, financial independence is gaining enough wealth to where you can no longer have to work for an income, where you could rely on your assets to support yourself. Financial independence is the ultimate form of financial security, and everyone should want to achieve financial independence, because it's also known as another thing later in life. It's known as retirement. Everyone needs to be financially independent at one point, but the earlier that you can do it, the better off you are going to be and the more financially secure you're going to be. So if you want a full guide on how to become financial independent, I really highly recommend you watch this video that I made. It's a little bit longer, but it's full of so much good information for you, and I know that it can help you out. So if you want to watch that video, I'm going to link it in the description below. I'm going to link it in a comment below, and it should be popping up right about now on the wall next to me where I'm pointing. And if you enjoyed watching this video, please don't forget to like the video. It really helps me out and I really appreciate it. And consider subscribing to the channel because I'm putting out new information on personal finance every single week, currently on Tuesdays and Fridays at 3 p.m., and I hope to see you there. Thanks again for watching. I'm Zach from OnCashflow.com, and I hope to see you next time.